You know, when you think about the 1973 film The Exorcist, you probably think it's one of the scariest movies ever made, right? But what if I told you the scariest part wasn't the demonic possession? It's a true story hiding in plain sight, about a man who appeared in the film and then went on to commit a horrific murder.
That's right, one of the most iconic horror movies of all time actually features a man who wasn't just acting. It's this crazy story that completely blurs the line between the horror you see on screen and, well, a much darker, grittier reality that played out just a few years later.
So you gotta be asking, right? How does someone go from a Hollywood film set to the middle of a murder investigation? Well, it all kicks off with this totally random encounter in a New York City hospital.
So this is Paul Bateson. Back in the early 70s, he was just a regular guy, a 31-year-old radiology technician. He had a decent, respectable job at a New York hospital and, from the outside looking in, his life seemed totally normal.
Yeah, how he ended up on the big screen was pure luck, really. The director of The Exorcist was scouting the hospital, doing research for a medical scene, and he was just so blown away by the realism of Bateson and his crew that he basically cast them right there on the spot to play themselves.
And here's where it gets really wild. The scene he was in, a cerebral angiography, it ended up being praised for how unsettlingly authentic it was. So he actually helped create one of the most disturbing moments in the movie, long before he went on to create a real-life horror story of his own.
But, after that little brush with Hollywood fame, Bateson's personal life started to completely unravel. And it happened fast. So think about it. In 1973, he's part of this massive cultural moment. But just 4 years later, by 1977, his whole professional life had totally fallen apart. He got fired from the very same hospital where he'd been discovered, mostly because his personal problems were just getting way out of hand.
So yeah, on the surface, he was the guy from The Exorcist. But underneath all that, he was battling some really serious demons. A 9-year relationship had just ended, leaving him incredibly lonely. And on top of that, he was wrestling with a really, really bad drinking problem.
And when I say a bad drinking problem, I mean severe. To give you an idea, he was downing more than a quart of vodka every single day. We're talking about a guy who sometimes started taking shots before he even got dressed. This wasn't just a habit, It was a full-blown dependency that was just eating him alive.
And this whole destructive spiral of drinking and loneliness, it was all building towards something terrible. It all came to a head on one violent, tragic night in 1977.
Okay, so Bateson's out at a club. He meets this guy, Addison Verrill. Now, Verrill was a pretty well-known journalist, a film critic for Variety magazine. They start talking, hit it off. Seems they both had an interest in partying.
So the night goes on, lots